This past week has been birthday week in the Dove household. Chase turned 10 today, and so we had our family traditional pancake breakfast early this morning. And then this last Thursday, Elisha turned 8. And Elisha's been counting down the days to his birthday for at least the last 3 months. This is a photo of him the night before his birthday, Wednesday night. Give me the, one more sleep till I turn 8 look. But every morning, no exaggeration, every morning these past at least 3 months, Elisha has grabbed my phone and he said, "Hey Siri, how many more days to the 8th of November?" And every single day, Siri politely answers, "There are 72 days till the 8th of November. There are 71 days till the 8th of November." Now, Elisha was never asking Siri because he didn't know how many days were to the 8th of November. He always knew. It's just he liked hearing those words getting smaller and smaller and closer to the 8th of November. He liked hearing how close it was. Oh, the anticipation of that day. And then 5 weeks ago, he moved from asking Siri how many days to how many minutes were remaining to the 8th of November. I just said to him, "Let me know when it's less than 100,000. And then it was, get this, how many seconds to the 8th of November, which Siri apparently does very, very fast. You can try it someday. But my son shows me what anticipation looks like. In 3 Sundays' time, we begin a season called Advent. And Advent is this 4-week celebration that the followers of Jesus have done for like hundreds of years in preparation for the coming of Christ. You see, the word Advent comes from this Latin word meaning Adventus, which is the translation of a Greek word called parousia. Some of you might be familiar with that word because it shows up in the New Testament to talk about the second coming of Jesus. This is what Advent is about. The coming of Christ. Not just his first coming at Christmas, but really the 3 comings that Advent talks about. Obviously, the coming of Christ as a baby in Bethlehem, but also the coming of Christ into our lives by his Spirit every day, and also what we look forward to one day, the glorious return of our Lord and Savior Jesus to put all things right in our world. See, Advent reminds us that we need Jesus. We love Jesus. We eagerly look forward to his arrival again. One of the practices of Advent is the idea of an Advent calendar. Each day a window is opened to anticipate a day that's coming, which is meant to fill us with hope and fill us with anticipation. Now, our society tends to take, a few things from church practice, and this is one of them. So I went to the store and I found a few Advent calendars. So there's no surprise that they're in there. These are some of the ones I found. There's the Transformers Advent calendar. There is the LOL Advent calendar. There is the Justice League Advent calendar, obviously in competition with Marvel. There is the trolley, a gummy Advent calendar. There is the Father Christmas Advent calendar. There is the Kinder Surprise Advent calendar. There is the Pokemon Christmas calendar. In fact, I think we also have the candy Advent calendar over here too. Now, do you notice any common themes emerging with any of these? Or perhaps the question might need to be, what is not in these Advent calendars? It's got nothing to do with Christ, does it? In fact, I opened some of these before just to see, what do they have on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? And you kind of get to the bit of a letdown because it's just like a reindeer of chocolate. I mean, that's all the anticipation is. It's kind of getting to a day. But Advent is more than just a day. You just open some presents, have a little piece of chocolate. So much more than that. It's the coming of Christ to renew all things in our world, to bring peace, to bring hope, to bring joy that is eternal. More than just some day where you get some chocolate and think about Justice League. Now, I'm not trying to do that so we kind of wag our finger at society. Because I know myself too well to know it's easy for me to get so distracted at Christmas time with all the other things that happen that I too can lose sight of the Christ of Christmas. I can get so preoccupied with so many other things going on and having to do things that I actually lose the joy and that sense of anticipation of the coming of Jesus. The next couple of weeks, you'll probably pull out a Christmas tree from your attic, pull out a few old decorations, kind of dust them off, untangle the lights. You know, I'm sure a few of you, when you came in today, saw this. Some of you would have got excited thinking about all that to come, but a whole bunch of us almost had to catch like a deep breath to go, oh, it's like 44 days till Christmas already. Because it just has that pressure of the season, doesn't it? The extra events that are coming. Already my calendar is triple booked on a couple of the days before Christmas. It's a reminder of the pressure of the season, the pressure to spend more than what you earn, to buy stuff for people they don't need anyway. Add to that the family dynamics. Is it at your parents' place or his parents' place? Or it might be the third year since the marriage split. Is he having the kids? Is she having the kids? The anxiety levels in our society are already sky high. Relationships are messed up. It's like every third person seems to have some kind of serious disease. Families are struggling. We're just like struggling, aren't we, to stay above water at times. But this is exactly why we need to put the real Advent back into our calendars and into our lives. Advent reminds us about the coming of Jesus to renew people and places everywhere. And as your pastor, I want to kind of prepare you for the season ahead by helping you put Advent back into your calendars and into your lives. This eager expectation, this eager anticipation for Jesus. Now to do that, I want to take you to a story in the Gospel of Luke. We spent 26 weeks in the Gospel of Luke this past year, but we missed this story as we were going through because there's so much in Luke. In Luke chapter 2, there are these two characters, Simeon and Anna. And each one of them captures this idea of Advent that I want to embed into our lives this season. And at the end of the talk, you'll see how these two naturally relate to each other. The first idea we have from Luke 2 comes from this character, Simeon. It's this idea of anticipation, that we prepare for Christmas with anticipation. Story takes place 40 days after Jesus has been born. Mary and Joseph take their precious firstborn son to the temple in Jerusalem to offer sacrifices. It was a very standard Jewish kind of thing for the day. They would have blended in as ordinary run-of-the-mill parents. But there's another face in the sea of Jewish faces in the temple that day, and it's this obscure man whom we meet right here and only here in Luke chapter 2 by the name of Simeon. So Luke puts it. At that time, there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon. He was righteous and devout and was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. The Holy Spirit was upon him and had revealed to him that he would not die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. Now, we're not told a lot about Simeon, but Luke says he was righteous and devout. It doesn't mean he was a perfect man. It just means that he had learnt over the long haul of life to devote himself to staying close to God. Do you notice what he's doing? It says that Simeon was waiting. In fact, the words Luke uses are eagerly waiting. God had promised Simeon that he wouldn't die until he had seen the Messiah with his own eyes. So he waited, and he waited, and he waited some more. And he waited for years because God had promised him. He watched, he prayed. He was doing something awesome that he probably didn't even realize what he was doing. He was keeping hope alive. It had been 400 years since God had spoken through his prophets. 400 years of silence. And Simeon was eagerly expectant of what God was about to do. How often Simeon must have walked the streets of the city waiting for the salvation of God that God had promised. We can imagine him, can't we? Watching the parents as they come into the temple, almost like peeling back some of the clothing of the babies just to kind of peel into their little faces and wonder, could this be the Messiah, the promised one? He was simply waiting in faith to do what God had promised. It's as if Simeon was saying, I believe God is doing something wonderful in this world, and I want to see it. I believe there is something tremendous going on, and God is the one behind it, and I want to watch it, and I want somehow to participate in what God is doing in this big event. And this idea of waiting, of anticipation, it's a big part of the Christmas experience, isn't it? Waiting for the big day. Waiting to open presents, waiting for the turkey to be cooked, waiting for your in-laws to leave. But it's more than this. It's waiting for Jesus. It's been full of anticipation for him because we long to see him. We long to experience the fulfillment of hope. You know, this idea of waiting is captured in the infamous Marshmallow Test. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this before. I was reading about it again this week by something Scott Winning wrote called God's Marshmallow Test. He said, basically in the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Stanford professor of psychology took 4-year-olds and put them in a room, just one at a time, to meet with a psychologist. And they would sit down at a table, and the psychologist would put a marshmallow right, out of the bag, big bag of marshmallows, and put one marshmallow right in front of the 4-year-old. And they'd tell the boy or girl, I'm about to kind of head out for a bit, and I'm going to leave this marshmallow right here on the table in front of you. Now, you can have that marshmallow at any time you want it. If you don't eat it, though, when I get back, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. But if you eat this one marshmallow, that's the only marshmallow you're going to get. Do you understand? They would say. And they'd make sure the 4-year-olds would nod their head and kind of repeat back the instructions so that all that instruction in the 4-year-old little brain would kind of be understood. And then the researcher would leave the room and leave the child all alone with that one marshmallow right on the table in front of them for a whole 15 minutes. It was some sort of sick medieval torture for a 4-year-old. This marshmallow test strained the very souls of these 4-year-olds as they battled between gratification and waiting. Some couldn't take it. They gobbled the marshmallow down as soon as the researcher left the room because, they just couldn't wait. Others developed some pretty ingenious strategies for coping with the torture of not eating the marshmallows because they wanted the 2 marshmallows the researcher had promised when he or she would come back. Some covered their eyes, just not wanting to look at the marshmallow. Some would sit on their hands so they wouldn't grab the marshmallow. Some would talk to themselves and even sing to themselves to kind of like keep themselves psyched in that space. Some would try to sleep, but they could never get to sleep. Some picked up the marshmallow and smelled it as if to get as close as they could to eating the marshmallow without doing so. And get this, one 4-year-old boy even licked the table all around the marshmallow as if by osmosis he might be able to eat it without actually eating it. The heartache and angst of waiting almost killed these 4-year-old kids in this marshmallow test. I would suggest that's exactly what we feel in many things in our lives. Waiting is hard. And we all enter into the season of enchantment, of Christmas with all the dreams we often talk about, feeling how things should be, but then plowing headfirst into the reality of where things are and the gap that exists between them. So we begin to ask, how long until this relationship is restored? How long until that friend or family member is finally whole? How long till loneliness is quenched with a significant relationship? How long before the hurt is healed or the ache is silenced? How long until our world is free of tragedies and war, particularly as we think about 100 years today? How long before there will be peace? How long before justice and goodness win? How long before the struggle is over and that habit and that sin is broken? How long until I am different? At some level, we experience, or what we experience reveals that we're actually living a version of this marshmallow test. I guess the question is, will we survive? And how do we pass the test? And it's not a popular answer, but I want to highlight the role of anticipation. Eagerly and actively waiting for Jesus. Looking expectantly for the coming of Jesus to renew all things. You see, Simeon has taken and kept this posture of eagerly waiting for Jesus through all the years. He hasn't become jaded or cynical in his waiting. He hasn't become a killjoy. He hasn't thrown up his hands in disgust and quit waiting. No, Simeon has kept this posture of eagerly waiting for Jesus, even though year after decade has rolled right on by without a glimmer of a marshmallow. But he's kept looking for Jesus. He's kept trusting that God would bring the fulfillment of hope in God's time. He's kept praying that God would help him to hold on and to wait, for God to even speed up the process. But in the meantime, he's been scanning the crowds for that child to come, scanning the crowd for the promise of God. Is that him? Is that him? God, is that him? Simeon has taken this active stance of waiting. See, maybe you're waiting for a romantic relationship. Or maybe you're waiting for clarity about some life's direction. Maybe you're waiting for a job to support yourself and your family. Maybe you're waiting for a wandering child to come home. Maybe you're waiting for a time when people will no longer be taken advantage of. Maybe you're waiting for the deep anxiety you experience to just go away. How long are you going to have to wait? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. But I know what matters is who I become while I'm waiting. That I don't become bitter or selfish, but that I wait expectantly on the Lord. I've heard John Ortberg say this before. The waiting isn't just a matter of getting what we are waiting for. It's also a matter of what we become in the process of waiting. See, one of the things I find fascinating about this whole marshmallow test is what it revealed about the sorts of people these kids would become when they entered into adulthood. Apparently, the 4-year-olds who were able to wait grew up to be more socially competent, better able to cope with frustrations in life, less likely to become rattled under pressure and stress in life. The 4-year-olds who couldn't wait grew up likely to regress or become immobilized, distressed, just couldn't make decisions, to be resentful about not getting enough for themselves, prone to jealousy and envy. See, waiting seems to change us, doesn't it, for good or for bad? And actively anticipating the coming of Jesus helps us to become the people we want to be while we're waiting. Now, we don't know how many months or years or decades Simeon had to wait. But what if he had given up hope? What if you just decided, it's not worth it anymore. It's not waiting for the coming of Christ. I'm just making a fool of myself in front of all these people in the temple. He would have missed the very moment he was created for. But he didn't give up. And then one day, Mary and Joseph came into the temple with little baby Jesus in their arms. And Simeon took Jesus, I guess to check whether it was the Messiah, as he's done probably for many other parents in the temple over many years. And somehow he knew. We're not told how he knew, but he knew, and he bursts into song. It's called the Song of the Waiter. Sovereign Lord, he says, now let your servant die in peace as you have promised. I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, and he is the glory of your people, Israel. I mean, what amazing words he uses to describe this baby Jesus. The word salvation. You know, that this baby is going to make all things new. He's going to save us from the strife and the predicament that we're in. It's for all people. Think about all the ethnicities and all the ages and all the backgrounds, because this is a global gospel. It talks about light. The idea that sin has put a kind of a wet blanket on our world, but the coming of Jesus kind of shines light in all the different corners of our world so we can see again. Luke goes on and tells us Jesus' parents were amazed at what was being said about him. I bet they were. It's pretty heady stuff. You know, they hand a baby over to a complete stranger and he starts to pray. Okay, all right, God, just take me home now. You know, I can die happy now because I've seen this baby. Just a glimpse of these people's baby is what I've been waiting my whole life for. You can imagine Mary and Joseph stoked and bursting with joy. And then Simeon says to Mary, this child is destined to cause many in Israel to fall, many others to rise. He's been sent as a sign from God, but many will oppose him. As a result, the deepest thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your very soul. Okay, got to run now. You know, you take care of yourself, Mr. Simeon. Because this is the last we ever hear of Simeon. It's a strange song, isn't it? This child is the hope of the world. He's what Simeon's been waiting for his entire life, but he's also going to be spoken against. Some people are going to oppose him, resist him, and some still do. And there's going to be great pain coming for Mary, Simeon says. And by the way, all this is pointing to the day that Jesus would die on a cross and a sword would pierce his side. And I guess at that moment, Mary felt the sword pierce kind of her side too. And no doubt she remembered these words. Mary, a sword will pierce you also. And kind of did. Explains why some of our family members scorn our commitment to Jesus. It explains why there can be so much resistance to Christianity in our wider culture. So was Simeon's waiting over? Now that he had laid his eyes on Jesus? I think the answer is found in that Kiwiism. Yeah, nah, sort of. Because Simeon has set his eyes on Jesus, but at a deeper level and more fundamental level, Simeon has been waiting for God to eradicate the heartache he's had over the way things should be and the way things are. Simeon has been wanting God to resolve all of this. And what Simeon sees this first Christmas brings him some relief because, well, Jesus has hit the scene. But all this hasn't finally been resolved because Jesus hasn't completed his work of renewing all things, at least yet. And I want to suggest to you that in many ways we are in the same situation like Simeon. We see the marshmallow in front of us, but we are waiting for the final resolution when the coming of Jesus will renew all things and make all things right again. And Advent helps us in that very waiting. It reminds us that Jesus has come as a baby. He's begun it all. The kingdom of heaven is among us, that we have a taste of something right now. It reminds us that Jesus is present in our lives or the lives of his followers by his Spirit, renewing us, renewing our relationships, our work, ourselves. It's like Christmas scratches the itch that we have in our waiting so that we can hold out for God to finally resolve our waiting in a day to come. But in the meantime, we wait and we wait, and waiting can be hard. Maybe waiting for loneliness to flee through a deep connection with someone. And Jesus comes at Christmas, and Jesus comes into our lives to give us a beautiful relationship that goes on for all eternity and brings us into friendships with people now to give us a taste of something that will be eternal. And while it's not resolution, it's still a relief for us. We may be waiting for a habit to change or for a cycle of sin to be broken. And Christmas reminds us that Jesus has given us forgiveness of sin now, enabling us to keep working and struggling to break the cycle of sin and to form new habits. But it's not resolution, but it's still a relief right now. We may be waiting for peace, particularly today, as we think about 100 years from the war. The absence of conflict is what we long for, the absence of chaos in our news headlines. And so Jesus comes at Christmas as the Prince of Peace, forming the basis of peace with others and enabling us to be peacemakers in our world, bringing us relief while we wait for God to finally resolve it. See, there's faith in our waiting. So we can wait for God to bring that marshmallow of His, even though it's so hard to wait. Christ coming at Christmas scratches the itch of our waiting so we can hold on for God to completely resolve it one day when Jesus will ultimately come back again. So as you think right now about what you're waiting for, can I encourage you to wait well? Would you not give up? Would you not become bitter, but realize and remind your souls that God loves you and God will bring exactly what you need? Can you trust Him? Can you pray? Can you obey God while you wait for the resolution? Would you eagerly wait for Jesus, watching and scanning for the day that God will bring that big marshmallow of His? Now, I mentioned earlier that Elisha has been counting the days down to his birthday and even seconds to his birthday for at least 3 months now. Well, on Thursday morning, the very day of his birthday, the 8th of November, he grabbed my phone. All of us were there in the room with him, and he grabbed and asked, Siri, how many days to the 8th of November? Siri herself sounded both relieved and excited when she declared, it's today. It's today. They were beautiful words to hear. I want to share in that kind of anticipation for Christ. Elisha's anticipation of his big day reminds me that all of us are to have that eager expectation as we wait for Jesus. And a day that we will be able to loudly declare, it's today. It's today. Help us grow in this anticipation for Advent. Our team's in the process of developing Advent calendars for all of us. Not just for little kids and young families, but all of us, because all of us need to be young at heart. Maybe we need to learn to giggle again and kind of count down and peel back some windows to anticipate the coming of Christ. All of us will have that, but it won't just be like some chocolate. It'll actually be like a window of hope to remind us Jesus is actually going to return. He is actually going to put all things right in our world. Exactly what we need. And each day you open that window. It's like Siri saying to you, 22 more days, 21 more days, 4 more days, to stir up this desire to eagerly anticipate Jesus' return. There's others around us who need to hear that Jesus is making all things new. And they need the hope of Christmas too. And this leads to the second practice that comes through here in Luke chapter 2. Kind of flows naturally from anticipation. It's this idea of announcement. That we prepare for Christmas by announcing the good news of Jesus. No sooner had Simeon walked away that there's this beautiful, amazing song from a woman named Anna. Anna was this old widow. Sadly, her husband had died just after 7 years of marriage. Since girls at that time were married very young, she may have been no more than 20 when her husband died. She's now 84 years old. It's a long time to be widowed. Some of you know what that's like. Listen to what Luke writes. Anna, a prophet, was also there in the temple. She was the daughter of Phanuel from the tribe of Asher. She was very old. Her husband died when they'd been married only 7 years. Then she lived as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple, but stayed there day and night, worshiping God with fasting and praying. She came along just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. She talked about the child to everyone who'd been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. You'd think it would be pretty easy for her to become bitter and hopeless about the difficult days that she's had in her life, particularly in that day, in that age as a widow. Luke tells us she worshipped night and day, fasting and praying. Simeon, she's kind of a bit like Simeon. She was a waiter. She was a hoper. She too was part of the fellowship of those who wait. And I want you to notice what else she does. Because in addition to the anticipation, she announces. I love the wording Luke has here. She talked about the child to everyone who'd been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. So the news was too good for her to keep to herself. She had to announce it to everyone else around. In fact, this is a common thing in the Christmas story. When the shepherds meet Jesus, they go out, and Luke tells us they told everyone what had happened. It flows like naturally from the sense of, we've met Jesus, and Jesus is doing something. We want everybody to hear about it. You know, all of my family knew about the countdown that Elisha had every morning, because he didn't just keep it to himself. He told us all how many days, how many minutes were left until his birthday for many, many weeks. It kind of flows naturally from anticipation, doesn't it? See, all around our city, right where we live, right where we work, there are people who need to hear about Jesus. Many of them don't realize that they need Jesus because they're seeking the relief around them through a whole bunch of other things, and it's not working. But each of us need to do what Anna does here. I love, again, the simple way Luke writes it. She talked about the child to everyone. And what I've found is that Christmas is the easiest time of the year to talk to everyone, or to talk about the child to everyone. There is kind of this openness that I don't see present in most other times of the year. And so we have here at GCC, I think, the very best way to announce that to our city, and it happens to actually fall on the first official day of Advent. It's called Christmas on the Monga. I've been talking about it a little bit now. There's some invites on your seats about it, up at One Tree Hill. And we want to Christmas on the Monga, kicking off Advent, not just for ourselves, but it's Advent for our city. And this is where all of us come in. Because our role, every single one of us, is also called to talk about the child to everyone. Which means we're all inviting people. You know, inviting people to come and have a picnic with you on the night up at One Tree Hill, enjoying a brilliant program. And the team of people who are serving on the night are going to make sure it is a brilliant program. They're going to do something where you can sit back with your friends and go, I'm proud of my church. This is my church doing this. I'm part of this. We want to make sure that happens, but we need to make sure all of us are inviting friends and colleagues to come along. I mean, imagine what can happen if every single one of us who call GCC their church home, brings along, just one friend. There would be over 5,000 people at Christmas on the Monga, just from that one friend we would invite. So I want to ask a few things right now. First of all, can you take your phones? And no, I don't want you to ask Siri how many days till Christmas on the Monga, because she probably hasn't learned that yet. We're going to have to help her. But what I want you to do, first of all, take the invite with your phone, take a photograph of it to make sure you have all the details that you need, because this invite isn't actually for you. It's for you to pass to somebody else. So take a photo, even now, it's fine, you're not being rude. Take a photo, make sure you've got it there, and then you put it into your calendars so that you know 2nd of December, I'm going to be Christmas on the Monga. Now, I found earlier when I did this, I was actually already booked on that night. I was going to have dinner with another couple from GCC, which we're now just going to bring to Christmas on the Monga, and have dinner there together instead. And it might be that you've already got something on, so just bring it along to Christmas on the Monga, bring them along, and that's the first thing. Now, I'm guessing most of you are on Facebook, are on Instagram, and so you have all of these friends or pseudo-friends in your life as well that you can invite to Christmas on the Monga. So you can even do this while I'm talking. How about there's a post at the GCC site at both Instagram, Facebook. Just go along and resend that, but not just resend it. Make a little note to say, hey, I'd love you, my Facebook community, to join me for a picnic, on the rug, Christmas on the Manga. How about we catch up on the year? Because we haven't seen each other for a while. How about we kind of just all assemble and start to invite people even through social media? And again, you can do that right now. While you're posting on social media, let me get Debbie to come up, Debbie Baxter, because I want you to hear, I guess, how these invites work and the ripple effect of these. So, Debbie, how long have you been part of GCC?
Christmas will be 3 years.
Christmas, 3 years. So Christmas coming, 3 years' time. How did you come to be at GCC?
Well, we had arrived in the country on the 5th of December and had been praying for a church home. We went to a Mexicali restaurant in Newmarket because we had to eat all our meals out because we hadn't quite settled yet. And we saw a postcard on the bench at the Mexicali restaurant. And it was promoting Christmas services at GCC. And then on the flip side, it was promoting the upcoming series on the book of Proverbs, Dear Younger Me. So we thought, well, Brittany said, I'm just studying Proverbs. Why don't we check this church out? So I went online, checked it out, and realized it's right behind Countdown where we had been shopping. We didn't even know it was here. But because of the postcard, we found the church and have been coming since.
So some random postcard. I'm not sure if anybody owns or works at Mexicali in Newmarket. But somebody had been and left it there, which I don't normally encourage you to do that, by the way, but somehow it got there by God, by his providence, and you see it, just a random invite, and you came along.
Yeah.
And
We've been praying for a church.
Yeah.
And so when she saw it, thought maybe this is God leading us to our home church.
And what I love about this too is, that Baxter's came with 4 in your family here, and then now the family has kind of married and grown, his girlfriend and another baby coming. So it's like now it's 7.5, 6.5, depending how we define things.
6.5, yeah.
Plus, girlfriend. And so you've got, and then through the Baxters, a whole bunch of people would say, I actually came to GCC through invites from these guys as a family. So, these ripples of you taking an invite, passing it to someone else or leaving it somewhere else, actually God can use in a pretty significant way.
Yeah.
So again, I want to keep encouraging you to post and let people know, because you never know what happens as God does something. Can we give thanks to Debbie for sharing her story with us too? And I guess just as we finish up too, just a reminder, I shared some figures about the faith and belief study in New Zealand a while back, and some of the figures were pretty depressing, but it also mentioned that 35% of non-Christians said they're open to change their viewpoint. 1 in 3. That's actually quite positive. 20% of them said they were warm to Christianity. It's 1 in 5. 90% said they already knew a Christian. And so, many of them actually want to engage talking about Jesus. And our role is to invite. Our role is actually to talk about this baby to everyone. Now, there's also need, in addition to inviting, there's also need for people to be helping out before the day and on the day. There's a letterbox drop meeting 2 p.m. on Saturday. There's free ice cream at Ollie's just afterwards. It's a bit of an enticement just to enjoy, a sense of belonging as part of a wider church family. On the day, we're looking for a host, set up and pack down crews, traffic wardens, chefs to help with the sausage sizzle. You can find all the details on the website or talk to somebody at the info desk. But it's about all of us getting behind this. So church, in 3 weeks' time, we kick off Advent. Shortly, you're going to be getting, your tree out and your decorations, and I might just look like, it's another Christmas. I don't want this to be just another Christmas. I want all of us as a church to step into the season differently. And we do that by including Advent in our calendars. Stepping into the season with anticipation and with announcement. We long to see Jesus, and we want to tell others about Jesus. So let's kick off Advent in style, 2nd of December, Christmas on the Manga, citywide celebration to tell our city that we love Jesus and that he is the hope of the world. I'd like to lead us in prayer, but I wonder if you can take these 2 invites that each of you have on your seats and take a moment and ask Jesus, before I pray, ask Jesus who he would like you to pass these invites to. Maybe he has some names of people, or he has a place for you to take these and pin them up somewhere. Just take a moment to talk to him about that. Just be open to what he might say and how he might nudge you. Let's pray. Jesus, there are hundreds of names of people being mentioned right now. And together as a church, we're asking that you would go ahead of us and that you would prepare the hearts and minds of these people to be receptive to the invite. Grant us the ability to follow through with what you're prompting us to do by your Spirit. And give us further opportunities beyond what we can even see in front of us. Help us this season to be filled with anticipation and announcement. Help us to catch the excitement of a child's longing because we long to see you, Jesus. We long to be part of what you're already doing in our city. Of course, you might be here today and you aren't in a life-giving relationship with Jesus. And there's something about what I'm saying that kind of hits your heart today. I want you to continue talking to Jesus. It's in your own words. There's no magical formula, but just to say, Jesus, I'm in. I've always known something about you to be true, but I've just got so distracted in my life trying to seek help and hope in so many different ways. But from now on, I want to look to you, Jesus. I want to be part of your family, whatever that means, and find this new life that you promise. So Jesus, all of us here today look to you, and we pray that we would look to you and continue to look for you this Christmas. Help us to set our eyes on you. And would you use our voice to proclaim you to people around us? Thank you, Jesus. Amen.